If Francis had given Mary Anning a husband, no one would have said a word. There should be more LGBTQ films made so that we don't feel the compulsion to compare the few that do exist. It's totally mad. You know, you wouldn't compare Titanic with Die Hard, Revolutionary Road with The Holiday. You know, they've got heterosexual people in them. These kinds of comparisons that people feel compelled to draw that automatically have the impact of making same-sex stories controversial. Why are we even using those words? That is really not right. It seems so strange to me. That's not how I was raised. But, you know, it was important to me to be able to contribute to this kind of storytelling and I think celebrating of same-sex connection that removed that sense of fear or hesitation. So I don't know, I hope that it's a helpful contribution to that evolution and progression, you know, because I do find it really baffling. I mean, I just don't understand it. It reaffirmed for me the importance of being oneself. But, you know, it is just easier said than done, depending where you're from, depending your background, your upbringing, you know, your past and your present. But one thing that I absolutely adored about Mary is that all the odds were stacked against her, and yet she still loved her job, never gave it up, was determined to be as good as she could possibly be at that one thing that she cared about and believed in spite of the fact that the world dealt her a really harsh hand. And she'd lost her father when she was only 11. She had 6 siblings die while she was alive, 2 before she was even born, a very complicated mother who was permanently in some state of grief and anguish. And she was self-taught, you know, and she had her pride always intact. She always held on to her pride. I really admired her for all of those things. She was a formidable, extraordinary person who still had the capacity for great acts of compassion for others, in spite of the fact that she had so little herself. So that sense of being kind and not harboring too much resentment to the point that it truly affected how she was with other people, you know, I think she was a remarkable, impressive, extraordinary person. If Francis had given Mary Anning a husband, no one would have said a word. And that's the that's got to change. With our interpretation of Mary's personal world and pairing her with a woman, I felt was really important part of our story, because it felt worthy of her in many ways, you know, to have lived a life where she was so hard done by, but she had suffered at the hands of men in particular, rich, powerful men who were not as clever as she was, who would take her finds and reappropriate them as their own discoveries. It wouldn't have felt right to pair her with a man, I don't think, because the environment and that patriarchal society was set up for men to succeed and not for women to succeed. And this is a story about a woman standing alone. And so I think allowing her that female intimate connection, it allows us into a more feminine side of Mary that I think might have been otherwise very easy for her to lose sight of, and to be loved, you know, to allow herself to be loved and to learn how to love back was a very important part of the whole story of Mary Anning. I will take those things with me because I learned a huge amount about how women have, I think, been too often objectified, still are objectified in film. And we just don't have that in Ammonite, you know, and part of our narrative is not a secret, hidden, forbidden love story between 2 women. There's no shame. It's just a love story between 2 people who happen to both be women. And I really, really like that, because for me, that contributes to the normalizing of same-sex connections in film, and it's one of the things that I hope will help to bring LGBTQ stories just right into our mainstream and not have the narrative be about the forbidden aspects of those connections.